Get me any pilot. I don't care if it's held together with duct tape. Just get me something with engines, Colonel Merritt snapped, stabbing his finger at a map blotched with red. Out past the wire, a recon unit was stranded, cut off, and out of time. A young operations officer hesitated, then spoke. Sir, we've got one A-10 pilot on standby. Merritt's brow furrowed. An A-10? That old hog? It's a museum piece. 2 minutes later, the walls trembled. A deep, rolling thunder tore across the base. Glass rattled. Shadows swept the tarmac. Merritt shot to his feet as a low-flying warthog screamed overhead, tearing the air open like a buzzsaw. He leaned toward the window, his voice low. Who the hell is flying that hog? Location: Ashland Joint Support Base. Perimeter of Zone K3. Alpha 3's convoy, cut off, surrounded and one pass away from being wiped out. But what Merritt didn't know, what no one in that room could imagine, was who was sitting in that cockpit and why her arrival would change everything. The air was thick with static and urgency. Reports crackled in, enemy fire closing fast. Alpha 3 stranded. Support delayed due to heavy jamming in the airwaves. Colonel Merritt's voice cut through the noise like steel. Get someone in the air. I don't care what it is, fighters. Bombers, just get them over Zone K3 in under 15. The operations floor scrambled. A lieutenant called out over the chatter. F-35's grounded for diagnostics, sir. F-18's mid-refuel and 20 minutes out. Another voice, younger, hesitant. Sir, there's one pilot outside the zone. She's in an A-10C, says she's ready for tasking. Merritt shot him a sharp look. An A-10? I didn't ask for a flying bulldozer. I need jets. Before anyone could answer, a radar tech spoke up. Colonel, A-10 inbound towards Zone K3, no flight plan, no clearance. Merritt turned. Who signed off on that launch? The comms officer glanced at his console. No one, sir. She picked up the distress call and launched herself. The room went still for a moment. Merritt snatched the mic. Unidentified A-10, this is Fort Ashford Command. State your call sign and return to base. That's a direct order. Only static answered. The comms officer switched frequencies, voice tight. A-10 in K3 airspace, do you copy? Still silence. The radar tech leaned forward, frowning. Colonel, she's flying dark. Silent run, but her heading is locked straight onto Alpha 3's last known position. Merritt slammed his palm on the table. She's breaking every regulation in the book. Who is she? The support officer scanned the flight registry. Call sign Raven 13, sir, but there's no active pilot under that name. Merritt's brow tightened. What do you mean, no one? A senior officer looked up from his console. Sir, Raven 1-3 was removed from all rosters. Retired after Operation Iron Veil. 3 years ago. Silence swept the room. The radar hummed softly, showing a lone blip inching closer to the red zone. Merritt's voice dropped low. Pull everything on Raven 13. The officer hesitated. Sir, that file's sealed. Merritt's tone was ice. I don't care if it's buried under the Pentagon. I have a rogue pilot in my battle space. I want answers. Just then, the comms exploded to life. Any station? This is Alpha 3. We're pinned down. Heavy fire. We need air cover now. A reply shot back from the base. Alpha 3, support is inbound. Desperation cracked through the radio. How long? We're not going to hold. Before anyone could respond, a calm female voice cut across the net. Alpha 3, this is Raven 13. I have visual on your position. The ops room froze. Merritt leaned into the mic. Raven 13, you are not cleared for this operation. Return to base, that's an order. Her voice came back steady, unshaken. Colonel, with respect, Alpha 3 doesn't have time to wait for paperwork. Merritt's jaw tightened. Raven 1-3, I am giving you a direct command, RTB now. A pause. Then Alpha 3's frantic voice cut in again. Any air at all, please. We are out of time! The room fell into silence, all eyes on Merritt. He stared at the radar, then slowly exhaled. Raven 13, you are cleared to engage. There was no reply. The radar showed her diving. She was already on her run. Scene Zone K3, combat airspace. The A-10 dropped low, skimming the ridgelines at 300 feet. Her profile was unmistakable, the rugged silhouette of a warthog. Hugging radar shadow. On the ground, Alpha 3's exhausted voices broke with hope. That's a hog. We've got air. Inside the ops room, Merritt's eyes locked on the tactical screen. A voice came through, calm, precise. Raven 1-3 on station. Mark targets. Kill the lasers. I'm going visual. The young coordination tech blurted out. Visual in this fog? That's insane. But before doubt could take root, The Jiu-8's unmistakable roar ripped across the comms, an earth-shaking burst of firepower. 3 enemy artillery positions erupted in seconds. The infantry cheered over the net. Direct hits! Perfect air support! Someone in the ops room whispered almost to themselves. Who is she? The A-10 banked away, her voice calm as ever. Alpha 3 will survive. Exiting airspace. The comms scrambled to hold her on channel. Raven 1 to 3, identify yourself! Only silence. The room fell quiet, the reality settling in. A junior analyst muttered in disbelief. Did she just fly a perfect gun run? On visual aim? In near-zero visibility? The radar tech shook his head slowly. Her flight path is textbook. Hugged the terrain, came in at the exact vector for perfect target spacing. Merritt leaned toward the screen, eyes hard. Pull every scrap of data we have on Raven 1-3. I want to know exactly who just saved my people. And why she isn't supposed to exist. Static filled the comms net. The room waited, every headset tuned to one frequency. Raven 1-3, come in. We need your debrief. Silence. Raven 1-3, that's a direct order. Return to base immediately. Still nothing but dead air. Then Alpha 3 patched through, breathless, voices tight but alive. Base, this is Alpha 3, artillery's gone. Repeat, artillery's neutralized. The relief in their tone rolled through the operations floor. A coordination officer leaned forward. Alpha 3, confirm target impact. We count 3 positions destroyed. Alpha 3's reply came back steady, almost in disbelief. Confirmed. 3 hidden gun nests, completely gone. No overspray, no friendly casualties. I've never seen runs that precise. Heads turned inside the ops room. The radar technician flipped through strike telemetry. Colonel. She fired 60 rounds from the GAU-8. Someone echoed the number, incredulous. 60? That's impossible. Most gunners burn through triple that just bracketing the target. Colonel Merritt's jaw tightened. How the hell is that even possible? The room fell quiet. From the far side of the room, an older voice spoke, a gravelly tone, measured and certain. It came from a retired A-10 pilot brought in as a technical advisor. He didn't look up from the radar screen. You don't fly that clean without years in the seat, and without scars to match. The room went still again. All eyes fixed on the silent blip of Raven 1-3. As it faded from K3 airspace, the retired A-10 advisor's voice carried across the room, low, certain and tinged with experience. That kind of precision. It's not just skill. It's years of flying where a miss wasn't an option. Colonel Merritt turned toward him. What are you saying? The older man's gaze stayed on the fading radar trail. I'm saying, whoever Raven 1-3 is, she's flown missions where every single round had to matter. No room for error. No second passes. The comms tech tried again, leaning into the mic. Raven 1-3, do you read? Please respond. We just want to say thank you. Silence. Then Alpha 3 cut through the static. Base, this is Alpha 3. We're mobile, moving to evac now. Just wanted to say, that pilot saved all 12 of us. Merritt sank slowly into his chair, eyes on the screen showing Alpha 3's convoy moving out of the red zone. He muttered quietly, almost to himself. 12 soldiers alive, because someone ignored my orders. The retired A-10 advisor's voice carried across the room, low, certain and tinged with experience. That kind of precision. It's not just skill. It's years of flying where a miss wasn't an option. Colonel Merritt turned toward him. What are you saying? The older man's gaze stayed on the fading radar trail. I'm saying, whoever Raven 1-3 is, she's flown missions where every single round had to matter. No room for error. No second passes. The comms tech tried again, leaning into the mic. Raven 1-3, do you read? Please respond. We just want to say thank you. Silence. Then Alpha 3 cut through the static. Base, this is Alpha 3. We're mobile, moving to evac now. Just wanted to say, that pilot saved all 12 of us. Merritt sank slowly into his chair, eyes on the screen showing Alpha 3's convoy moving out of the red zone. He muttered quietly, almost to himself. 12 soldiers alive, because someone ignored my orders. He stared down at the map. I said no A-10s, I made it clear. I wanted jets, nothing else. If she'd listened, the sentence trailed off. He didn't need to finish it. A junior officer stepped forward cautiously. Colonel, should we log this as an unsanctioned operation? Merritt's gaze shifted to him, measured, sharp. Report what? That a pilot not even on our roster flew a flawless, close air support op and saved 12 men? The officer hesitated. Well, yes, sir. Protocol. Merritt cut him off, his voice edged with steel. Protocol would have left Alpha 3 in pieces. While we waited on the right paperwork, the room went still. The radar tech broke the silence. Colonel, the A-10's gone. Completely off our scopes. She's out of range. Merritt leaned forward. Any clue on her heading? The tech shook his head. No, sir. She dropped below radar, used the hills, and vanished. Merritt turned to the officer who'd first mentioned her. You said her call sign was retired after Operation Iron Veil? The officer nodded. Yes, sir. Merritt's tone hardened. What exactly happened during Iron Veil? The man hesitated. Sir, I'd need clearance. Files are restricted. Merritt didn't blink. Then get clearance. I don't care how deep they're buried. Someone just saved 12 soldiers, and I want to know who she is and why she's not supposed to exist. As the secure request began transmitting, Alpha 3's final transmission came in. Base, this is Alpha 3. The room leaned in. Alpha 3's voice broke through the static, tired but alive. Base, we've reached extraction. Tell Raven 1-3, we owe her our lives. Colonel Merritt leaned into the mic, his tone firm but carrying a rare softness. Copy that, Alpha 3, welcome back. There was a pause on the other end. Base, one last thing. Merritt glanced at the comms officer. Go ahead, Alpha 3. The voice came back steady, but with a weight that landed across the room. Whoever she was, the way she flew, the way she hit those targets, that wasn't standard air support. Merritt straightened. What do you mean? Alpha 3's leader didn't hesitate. This was someone who's done it before, in places where close enough wasn't good enough. I'm not listed on today's mission either, Colonel. But I fly. Because once I waited and no one came. The line went quiet. The technician hesitated, scanning the file further. Colonel, there's more here about Operation Iron Veil. Merritt's voice dropped low. Go ahead. The officer looked uneasy. Sir, that operation was doomed from day one. They sent in a mixed squadron based on bad intel. Merritt's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as the weight of those words settled over the room. Colonel Merritt's voice was low, steady. What kind of intel are we talking about? The technician hesitated, scanning the old mission logs. The reports missed one critical detail, sir. The enemy wasn't just dug in. They had advanced surface-to-air systems. None of that was in our briefings. And they were running heavy jamming. GPS and radios went dark the second our first wave crossed the line. The room shifted uneasily. A quiet voice broke the silence, an older senior officer, his eyes fixed on the floor. I remember Operation Iron Veil. We lost 6 aircraft. 22 crew in the opening minutes. The tech gave a grim nod. That's when Voss launched. No orders, no backup. She went in blind, no comms, no nav, nothing but visual bearings straight into hostile airspace. Merritt leaned in, his gaze fixed on the open file. And somehow she still found the survivors? The tech nodded. All 18 of them, scattered over 30 square miles of hostile terrain. Merritt frowned. How do you pull off a rescue without communications? The technician hesitated, then answered quietly. She didn't coordinate it, Colonel. She did it. Merritt's voice sharpened. Meaning? The senior officer looked up at him. She flew the shield. Made herself the target. Again. And again, while the ground teams pulled the survivors out. Merritt's eyes narrowed. She went back. The senior officer's expression didn't change. Not once, Colonel. 17 separate runs. 8 hours of flying straight into SAM coverage. Over and over again. The room fell still, the weight of the number sinking in. The tech picked up again, voice lower now. On her final run, she took a direct hit. Hydraulics gone, engine failing, nav systems wrecked. But she still managed to land. Barely. Emergency set down on a rural road. 20 miles outside the zone. The aircraft didn't make it. She did. Merritt looked up from the file, stunned. So why was she suspended? The senior officer's tone turned cold. Because she broke direct orders. Headquarters had canceled all further attempts. Said it was too dangerous. The senior officer looked up at him. She flew the shield. Made herself the target. Again. And again, while the ground teams pulled the survivors out. Merritt's eyes narrowed. She went back. The senior officer's expression didn't change. Not once, Colonel. 17 separate runs. 8 hours of flying straight into SAM coverage. Over and over again. The room fell still, the weight of the number sinking in. The tech picked up again, voice lower now. On her final run, she took a direct hit. Hydraulics gone, engine failing, nav systems wrecked. But she still managed to land. Barely. Emergency set down on a rural road, 20 miles outside the zone. The aircraft didn't make it. She did. Merritt looked up from the file, stunned. So why was she suspended? The senior officer's tone turned cold. Because she broke direct orders. Headquarters had canceled all further attempts. Said it was too dangerous. Merritt's eyes darkened. She was told to stand down. The officer nodded. Command had already written off those 18 as lost. The words hung in the air. Merritt spoke softly, almost to himself. And she flew anyway. A pause. She flew anyway. He shut the file, his expression unreadable. What happened at her hearing? The technician scanned the archived notes. She was given a choice: accept the reprimand, keep flying, or defend her decision and face discharge. Merritt's voice was quiet. What did she choose? The tech read the final line almost reverently. She said, and I quote, "I won't apologize for saving 18 people." The tech's voice was quiet but steady as he read from the file. Her words, sir. If that gets me kicked out, so be it. Colonel Merritt closed the folder slowly. And they cut her loose. The older officer nodded. The same pilot who pulled off the most daring combat rescue we've seen in decades. From the comms section, a younger tech spoke up. What about the ones she saved? The officer glanced at the records. 15 went back to active duty. 2 were medically retired. 1 became an instructor. And every single one of them testified on her behalf. Merritt raised an eyebrow. Didn't work? The officer shook his head. Command refused. Said reversing the discharge would set the wrong precedent. The words hung heavy in the air. Merritt stepped away from the table, walking slowly to the window overlooking the dim runway. So she was thrown out for saving lives. The officer nodded. That's the summary, sir. The room stayed still for a long moment. Merritt turned back toward the team. And now she's still out there. Still flying, alone. The tech hesitated. The files show 17 unsanctioned rescues in the last 3 years. Every one of them happened when official teams were told to stand down. Too risky, too costly. Merritt's brow furrowed. 17? The tech nodded. 17 times. Someone got air support from a ghost A-10. No request. No acknowledgement. She just showed up, finished the job, and vanished. Merritt stepped forward. Show me the pattern. A map hit the table. Pins, notes, timelines already marked. The comms officer pointed to clusters on the map. Every single one followed a mission cancellation. Merritt studied the pins. And the timing? The comms officer replied without looking up. In every case, she arrived within hours of command calling off the mission. Merritt traced the line of pins with his finger, his jaw set. Feels like she's tapped into our comms. Listening for the calls we decide not to answer. A security officer shifted uneasily. Sir, that would mean she's accessing secure military channels. Merritt didn't look away from the map. She used to have access. Maybe she never lost it. The security officer leaned in, concerned. If she's still in those systems, that's a major breach. Merritt finally looked up at him, voice calm but firm. 17 rescues. 67 lives brought back. 0 deaths. And you're worried about encryption? The room went silent. Merritt's voice carried through the quiet. Regulation would have left Alpha 3 to die while we checked boxes. Is that the outcome you'd prefer? No one spoke. Merritt turned to his senior staff. Reinstate Raven 1-3, not officially. Emergency use only. An operations officer objected. Sir, she's not in the system anymore. Merritt's tone didn't change. Then don't log it. Just make it possible. The officer frowned. Possible how? Merritt stepped closer, tapping the edge of the comms console. Make sure when no one else can answer. There's a channel left open. Just in case. The senior officer nodded slowly. A fallback. When official help fails. Merritt's eyes hardened. Exactly. A younger tech hesitated. And if she doesn't want to come back? Merritt's gaze dropped to the ops. Map still lit from Alpha 3's extraction path. She already came back. We're just catching up. The room was quiet again as Merritt turned toward the window. His voice dropped almost to himself. Some orders get answered before they're even spoken. Seen 3 days later, pre-sunrise. The first light crept over the horizon. Somewhere out in the distance, the low, steady rumble of twin General Electric turbofans rolled across the quiet morning. A lone A-10 broke through the haze. The fog lay thick across the tarmac when the shape of a lone A-10 Thunderbolt II emerged through the haze. Auxiliary Field 17 was all but deserted, except for the silent aircraft taxiing to a halt. No pilot climbed out. Inside the cockpit, a single folded note was left behind. "I'm not here for thanks, just for proof they made it out alive." Hours later, Alpha 3 sent a small package up the chain. Inside was a metal badge, simply engraved. To Raven 1-3, who saw before radar did, Colonel Merritt drove out personally after the report of an unregistered aircraft landing. The old Warthog was still sitting there, engine silent, canopy closed. No clearance. No flight record. Security had cordoned off the area, but Merritt waved them back. "Stand down. I need to see it myself." He walked across the damp concrete toward the A-10, the early sunlight glinting off its patched armor. Climbing the ladder, he opened the cockpit canopy. The note sat there, folded on the seat. Merritt read it, then stood still for a long moment, silent, thoughtful. A maintenance NCO approached cautiously. "Sir, should we impound it?" Merritt glanced over the machine. Despite its age, it looked combat-ready. Every line of the fuselage carried a history. He asked quietly, "Condition?" The NCO ran a hand along the reinforced wing route. "Sir, this bird's cleaner than most of our active fleet. Someone's been taking care of her." "Serious care?" Merritt's brow furrowed. "Any idea where she's been?" The NCO shook his head. "No record. But from the modifications and the wear patterns, I'd say she's been flying solo for years." Merritt circled the aircraft slowly, his fingertips brushing the armor plates. Reinforced skin. Custom avionics. Not the work of a hobbyist, these were survival upgrades. Finally, he turned back. "Sergeant, move this aircraft to Hangar 7, behind security, but don't process it as evidence." The NCO blinked. "How do you want us to log it, sir?" Merritt's gaze stayed on the A-10. "Don't. Treat it like a reserve unit. Someone may need it again." Word about the ghost Warthog spread across Fort Ashford like wildfire. Pilots wandered in, each drawn to the legend taking shape. They walked around the aircraft, inspecting every inch. One veteran pilot ran a hand over the rebuilt targeting array. "Check these mods. Whoever flies her knows exactly what they're doing." Another leaned in, studying the instrumentation. "This isn't regulation. This is combat knowledge, years of it. Every tweak here was made by someone who's been in the fire and come back out." The hangar fell quiet for a moment, the sound of tools echoing softly. In the middle of it all, the old Warthog sat still, waiting. A cluster of pilots stood around the Warthog, each taking in the details. One younger officer ran his hand along the side panels. "And look at the ammo racks, set up for max output, zero waste." A veteran A-10 driver stepped closer, leaning into the open bay. His voice dropped to a quiet murmur. "This isn't just upkeep." Another pilot glanced at him. "How do you mean?" The older man's eyes stayed on the jet. "This is personal. Somebody loved this bird. You can feel it in the work. Every line, every bolt. This kind of care doesn't come from a checklist. It comes from the heart." Colonel Merritt walked into the hangar, a small item in hand, the metal badge Alpha 3 had sent. He climbed up to the cockpit and set it down gently on the seat, right where the note had once been. A security officer approached. "Sir, we've had reports someone's been visiting the aircraft at night." Merritt looked at him steadily.
"Did you run it down?"
The officer hesitated. "We tried, sir. But whoever it is, they slip past every patrol." A faint smile touched Merritt's face. "Maybe they're not meant to be caught." The officer tilted his head. "Sir?" Merritt looked back at the Warthog. "Some things work better when we don't get in the way." Over the next few weeks, the ground crews began noticing something strange. The Warthog was always spotless, always combat ready. But there was no record, no scheduled maintenance orders. A crew chief reported it during a staff check. "Sir, it's like she gets serviced when no one's watching." Merritt looked up. "By who?" The chief shook his head. "No clue, sir. But whoever it is, they know these systems better than most of our own people." Merritt issued a quiet directive to his deputy. "Hangar 7 stays secure, but after-hours access. Stays flexible." The deputy raised a brow. "You're saying—" Merritt's tone was calm. "I'm saying someone's keeping this bird ready for flight, and we're going to let it happen." The deputy gave a slow nod. "What do we call this setup?" Merritt looked back at the Warthog, the sunlight cutting across her fuselage. A pause. "Call it what it is. A standby we don't advertise." Merritt stood beside the old Warthog, his deputy watching quietly. The younger officer finally asked, So what do we even call this? Arrangement? Merritt's eyes stayed on the aircraft. Call it insurance, he said evenly. For when the system doesn't show up. A small metal plaque appeared in the main hallway of Base HQ. No name, just the silhouette of an A-10 cutting low through a band of haze. Beneath it a single word, Raven 1-3. It didn't take long for it to become legend. New pilots were quietly briefed during squadron indoctrination. The flight leader would lean in, voice steady. If someone calls for air support and no one answers, there's a chance Raven 1-3 already heard it. Rookies would glance at each other, curious. And then the leader would add with quiet emphasis, if you spot an old warthog, tucked in a corner, one not on any manifest, don't touch it. That one belongs to someone who gets there before the orders do. The plaque became a quiet symbol among the crews. Newcomers would notice it and ask. Veterans would explain slowly and with respect. Who was Raven 1-3? The answer was always the same, delivered like a truth carved in steel. Someone who understood that saving lives matters more than ticking boxes. One rookie asked a question that hung in the air. Is she still flying? A pause, a faint knowing smile from a senior crew chief. She flies. It started as a single act of defiance, but over time, it became something rare in the rigid world of military air operations. Whenever official channels called a mission too dangerous, whenever command gave the order to stand down, one last option remained, a quiet frequency. Never written down, never formally logged, yet somehow always answered. A call sign that never appeared on any active roster, but was always there when it counted. An aircraft no one claimed to service, yet somehow always fueled, armed, and ready to fly. 2 years later, Colonel Merritt stepped down from command. At his farewell, the hangar was full, pilots, ground crews, officers. He stood at the podium, the Raven 1-3 plaque visible on the wall behind him. Merritt's voice carried the weight of a man who had learned what mattered the hard way. You'll all face moments where the manual won't help you, where what's right won't match what's written. He paused, scanning the room before his eyes settled on the plaque. And when that day comes, remember, the mission isn't just to follow the book. The mission is to get your people home. Another pause. His tone dropped, quiet but resolute. Sometimes the real work happens outside the wire. That doesn't make it wrong. That makes it vital. After the send-off, Hangar 7 was quiet again. Inside the cockpit of the old Warthog, a fresh note appeared on the seat. No signature. Just a few simple words. Thanks for knowing some things matter more than protocol. The note in the cockpit was signed simply, R13. Colonel Sarah Whitaker, successor to Colonel Merritt, kept the Raven 1-3 arrangement in place. When questioned, she gave the same answer Merritt once had. Not all capabilities fit neatly inside the standard model. That doesn't mean they're not worth keeping. Over the next 3 years, the Warthog flew 12 more missions. Each time it appeared when official teams couldn't. And each time it vanished as soon as the job was done. The Raven 1-3 plaque began to take on a deeper meaning among flyers. It wasn't just about one pilot anymore. It was about the belief that some operations matter too much to wait for permission. The Raven 1-3 plaque began to take on a deeper meaning among flyers. It wasn't just about one pilot anymore. It was about the belief that some operations mattered too much to wait for permission. New recruits were quietly brought before the plaque. No speeches. No ceremony. Just a moment of silence and the unspoken understanding that they weren't being welcomed into a unit. They were being welcomed into a promise. Do what it takes to bring your people home. Somewhere, just off the official record, that old A-10 stayed sharp. Someone was still tending to her. Because duty doesn't end when the paperwork is signed. Years later, one final line was etched beneath the Raven 1-3 plaque. For those who fly when others choose not to. If this story struck a chord with you, drop a comment below. We read every single one. And if you believe stories like this shouldn't fade away, subscribe to Old Bill's Tales. Because here we keep alive the stories that were never meant to disappear. Stories told by the people who lived them.